Politics exists everywhere. Politics at work can be super exhausting. They can turn a place toxic, create health issues, and hamper productivity. There is a better way, though. We all know there is a better way, but what happens if we play nice when others don't? If I become the good guy at work, will this have a negative impact on my career? Join me as I interview Brad Wilson, a senior leader in HR with more than 20 years of experience, to talk about his story, his thoughts on doing good work, and why this matters so much to him. We'll talk about practical tips to leverage goodness at work with real life positive outcomes. Brad, thank you so much for being here.
Thank you, Mateo. It's such a pleasure. I love your podcast, just love what you're doing, and excited to be here and talk about goodness at work.
So, Brad, you have a book, Good Work, coming up, where you talk about the value and the importance of doing good work, being good, doing good at work, right? Why is this so important to you, and what's your story? How did you end up wanting to write a book on this topic?
So, I've been in human resources for many, many years, and Mateo, I have just seen just the value of being good at work, kindness. There's that word, being nice at work, that the nice guy, finishes last. I've just seen over time that really toxic workplaces with the absence of goodness are just horrible places to be. Like you say, politics everywhere, politics at work, politics all around that do not add value. And I think you and I talked a little bit recently about how, you're a kid and you leave your home and you walk out the screen door and you hear your mom say, "Be good," or "Remember who you are." And then you go out to school or you go out to work or whatever it is, and you realize that, maybe that loving home that you were in is not really existing at school or at work. And the question for me is why? Why do we play all these games and play all these politics and kind of one up each other at work? Because frankly, what I've seen in work culture is when you have that toxicity, that all knives out, stab your coworker in the back or your fellow student. Um, People are not happy, and honestly, you don't do great things when you work in a culture like that. So, I've been actually this book has been on my mind, right, being written for years because I've seen in the work culture where, man, if you added up all the hours of times that people were in my office in tears or just sad or just not loving being at work, if you turn that into productivity, companies would do amazing things, organizations would do amazing things. And so I'm writing this book, like you say, to give tips and tricks as to how to not lose your goodness, your good self, your nice person at work, but still be able to succeed, which seems like an oxymoron, but honestly, um, what I've seen is companies that really succeed are companies that have really good cultures that value each other and value the potential of of each worker. So it's been a journey, and I'm excited for the book to be released soon.
I'm excited too. I'm looking forward to it. And we had, so for the audience, right, we had prep talks prior to getting to our podcast. And as you kept talking and kept sharing your story and why you think this is so important, um, the older I get, the more I agree with this and the more I see it, right? The more it becomes easier to understand. But let's go to the concept here. What do you mean when you say good work? How and when do we need to do good? And can you share some like examples for the audience?
Yeah, I mean, being good does work. It does work at work. And I guess I'll start off by talking about how, this being kind and being nice sometimes is maligned, or it we think that it doesn't add value to the workplace. And the reason why we need to be kind is because it really does add value to work. And the challenge of people being labeled as being kind and nice is there's this perception out there that being kind and nice makes you weak. And so what I want the tips and tricks that I want to bring out in our conversation today is how you can keep that goodness and kindness in your life at work and still be successful. And so some examples of this, and you and I talked about this earlier, is how sometimes you have to take yourself out of situations like if you're working around a narcissist, you just see that it's all about them. And when it's all about them, they great things are not accomplished. And I'll give you one example where I kind of step back in the workplace. I worked for an international organization, a not-for-profit, and they did HR certifications. And I love to travel, and I had this opportunity to travel to Spain and to speak to an international audience about HR certification. And I spent a few years in Spain earlier in my life, and I'm I think I'm fairly good at speaking Spanish. I'm not a native speaker or anything, but my coworker was a native Spanish speaker from Spain, and I could have said, well, I want this opportunity to speak in Spain. And this would be so great if I did that because it would be good for me. But then I stepped back and thought, what would be best for the organization? And honestly, my coworker who was from Spain, who had that language ability, native ability from Spain, it would be best for him. So I said to JD, I said, you should do this. This is best for our organization. This is best for everyone all around. We both went on the trip, but he was the one that was able to present. And honestly, it helped our organization more than anything. Now, that's the value of stepping back, being kind, giving someone else that opportunity, and helping our organization to succeed. However, I mean, you also, as a good, kind person, you have to be willing to say, all right, this is my turn. I have this talent and ability. I'm going to step forward in whatever opportunity comes and be strong enough to say, I'm kind, I'm good, but this is my chance. And so it's a balance between because we all know those narcissists are the people that think it's all about them. The opportunity is always theirs that they take if they're good at it or not. And so if you're good and kind, it's a little bit harder to be that, but you have that opportunity to say, all right, I'm watching what's best for everyone around me, and I'm going to step back sometimes, but I'm also going to be the strong person that steps forward and takes opportunities that really fit. And it's just a maturity, right? I hope we can get to a point in the workplace where we have that maturity where people are not so afraid of, helping other people to succeed as you're trying to succeed at the same time.
Now, why do you think that happens? Why do you think some workplaces become more toxic than others? What's really at play when that happens?
So here's the trick about work culture, and you've seen this, I know, Mateo, in your life experience as well. These types of cultures are driven from top down. So if leadership in a company has this attitude of knives out, take your opponent out, even if they're within your own organization, um, then that's what's going to happen throughout the whole organization. And I can give an example where this happened to me. I was on an executive team, and um, we were in a executive meeting, and I had a coworker that just loved to bash everyone around him, just to make himself look smart, like he had to be the smartest person in the room. So he's attacking me about something that honestly didn't really even make any sense in my mind. It wasn't really driving toward the goal of what our conversation was doing was trying to accomplish. And as we went on, I fought back where I could, where I thought it was important. And then afterward, he said, "Well, I'm sorry. I had to say all that." And then the leader above us, one of the leaders of the company said, "Never apologize. Never apologize for taking on someone or attacking someone in that way. I don't want us walking around afraid to say what's on our mind." Um, throughout that executive team and the culture was this attitude of I've got to be the smartest person in the room. I've got to be the gotcha person that shows that I'm smarter than someone else. And honestly, that kind of culture, that kind of attitude just breeds contention, and you really have a hard time accomplishing anything great. Now, that doesn't mean if you disagree with someone or there's something that you need to challenge, that's not a problem. But if you're just challenging someone to make yourself look good or make yourself look like the smartest person in the room, not actually trying to solve a problem, that becomes an issue. And that's why it's so important in my book about the kind of good person. You a good person doesn't attack like that. They look for the win-win situation. They look for, okay, we disagree, but how can we get to the point where we come to a solution that works for everyone, that makes sense, rather than, oh yeah, here's the person that's always the smartest person. They're always attacking someone else. They know, then they have to be that person that knows more than anyone else. And the good person looks around and says, okay, what's going wrong here? How can we fix it? And how can we have a conversation that really works the best for everyone, rather than I'm just going to throw a bunch of junk out there because I need to look the smartest in the room. So that's really, it's in answer to your question, it comes from top down a lot of times. It also sometimes comes from those employees that they have this vain ambition, and then maybe they're at the bottom and they try to take people out on the way up, and they spread gossip, or they attack people, or just make up stories about people that aren't true. And those folks you have to watch out for in a work culture as well, because they will do anything to climb that ladder. Some a lot of times throwing ethics out of the window, and sometimes even legally not caring if whatever they're trying to do is against the law, as long as they get to where they want to be, and they do it in a very attacking way. And honestly, that's where toxic workplaces come and subsist and continue on until people just, honestly, I've seen this happen over and over again, where it drives good employees out of the workplace and they just go somewhere else. You lose good employees because of that toxic workplace.
Yeah. Or more sadly, some of them burn out, right? They are not even going anywhere else. They are just going home with a health issue or something even worse, right? So
Yeah.
um now let's talk about that. Let's talk about practical advice. If you want to do good, you're listening here and you go like, I want to do good. I just don't know how to navigate the toxic environment I am currently in, right? What will be your advice to them?
Yeah, well, so I always, and maybe people might call this a fault, but I always look for opportunities to promote my coworkers. And like the example I gave when we went to Spain, and I thought, well, this is a great opportunity for my coworker. And it's inherent in me. That's why I want to talk about this to the world, that if that is inherent in you, like you just have this innate um, need or want to help other people, like what is wrong with that in the workplace? So I think, first of all, that's important, not to lose that. Um, but but how can you be good and remain good at work? Honestly, there's some things that you can do. I noticed early on in my career that I was seeing people advance, and I was like, why am I not getting those positions, those opportunities? Maybe it is because I'm too nice. But I started to look at my skill set and say, all right, what am I missing in my skill set? I had a bachelor's degree in psychology, minor in human resources, minor in Spanish. But then I thought, well, if I really want to compete and I want to get to that next level in HR, I'll need a master's degree. So I worked on a master's degree and got that. I also acquired several professional certifications. I think I've had a total of 5 now. So one thing you can do to guard against being able to be successful and be kind at work is, what does your skill set look like? What are you missing? What are the missing pieces to make you marketable and make you more independent? Because one of the challenges of being quote unquote too nice at work is you're dependent on your leadership, whoever you report to, your manager or the leadership of a company, and how they view you, and how your career kind of depends on them. But I would say if you're wanting to have a little more resilience or a little more protection, insulation against that, build your skill set. Make yourself a little more indispensable. Make yourself more marketable. That where a company's like, well, we need them around, or we know other companies are going to be coming after that person because they have a greater skill set. So it's forming that independence. So if things get really bad at work, because sometimes they do, you have options. You can leave. I would say even save some money. Save some money for a rainy day where if a work culture gets really, really bad and you feel like you can't change it or you can't survive, or like you said before, Mateo, that some people they just get burned out. They have health issues. They know they don't have any other options, so they stay there. They quit in place, like we've seen so much in the workplace. But make yourself more marketable and find those opportunities. Then you can have the courage to say, no, we're not going to do that. Like we're not going to play that game, that political game that I know is not right. And so it's building that. And also, you have to anticipate, unfortunately, those kind of narcissistic mean people at work. I'm gonna call them mean people at work. You can look around and see what they're trying to do. Like if you can see that they're trying to climb the ladder and they're going to take anyone out. And again, one of the stereotypes of being too nice or too kind is that you're a pushover and you're going to be afraid to call someone out. So if you see someone playing those political games, call it out and say, I know what you're doing. I see the game you're playing, and I'm not just going to let this slide. And pull them in an office and say, hey, I see what's going on here. And and so you try to understand, or in advance try to see the playing field and see what's going on and see what people are trying to do. And if they're trying to take you out, because people do, people will target, if you're in their way, they'll target you. So you find ways to call that out, to see it first of all, and then call it out and let them know, hey, I'm not going to put up with that.
I
It's kind
like
of
it.
tricky. Yeah.
It's a tricky balance, but you can be nice and assertive at the same time. And if you work on your independence, marketability, kind of redundancy of your options, right? Saving, staying marketable so that you can jump elsewhere and you anticipate what's going on. Because sometimes you just said it, sometimes you need to leave, you need to jump ship and find another ship, right? And so it's based on your skill set that you're going to be able to do that. And if you get there, then the difficult conversations become easier, right? You just don't want to tolerate the BS, the crap, whatever.
100%. I mean, isn't that's where you build the other thing that nice people get their stereotype is that they're not confident. You can be kind and confident at the same time. I love what you just said, that then you have confidence, you have mojo, right? If you like, you have this backup plan, you have mojo, and and honestly, those people who are, kind of the overpowering, mean, narcissistic people respect a little bit when you get in their face. And they don't expect nice people to do that. But if you develop that skill and say, no, I'm not, I'm going to stand up right here. This is not right. They somewhat respect it. Or it escalates things even worse. And then you say, all right, this is not going to work out. I'm going to start looking for another company or another opportunity.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
it's sad when companies allow those type of people to take over the culture, right? I want a nice person revolution where we don't allow people to just run us over and say, yeah, and we've seen it. I've seen people come in, like executives come into companies and say, "I'm going to make my mark," and they immediately start, their agenda and the whole agenda is how can they look great and be successful, not even caring about what they're bringing into the company. They don't come into the company and look around and say, hey, what's going great in this culture? What's going great in this company? How can we make that better? Their only goal is to walk in and say, I'm going to be at that highest level, and I don't care who I take out, and I don't care what damage I do to this company. It's all about me. And if we allow that to continue in corporate world, who's going to want to work for any company? Our engagement's already like 30%. It's going to get worse. It's not going to get better.
Yeah, no, I completely agree with you. And it starts at the top, but I will argue that someone that is good at the top is going to ask people throughout the entire organization to raise their hands and call it out when we are deviating, right? Um,
Yes.
because we're all vulnerable, we are all imperfect human beings, right? I can try to be, I'm a CEO and I
Hmm.
think I try to do good. But sometimes, even without realizing it, I know I can be an asshole, right? Or I can do, I was called out the other day. I was in a meeting and my selection of words wasn't the best. The
Yeah.
person that was hurt by this eventually called me out and we had a great conversation and she said, hey, you said this and this. And this is how I felt.
Yeah.
And my response was, you're right. I was wrong. I'm sorry.
Well, that's amazing. That's how it's supposed to work, right? Because like you say, none of us are perfect, and we step on other people all the time, not even knowing it. But that is a perfect example of that's the call out, right? Hey, when you said this, this is how you made this is the impact you had on me, right? I love that story. That's how it should be. But honestly, Matteo, you're a mature CEO. Let's be real. A lot of folks in high leadership, they don't want to hear, uh, they would not want to hear that conversation from this person that came to you and said, this is a challenge, right? They don't want to hear that.
No. Which brings me to my next question. You talk about putting egos aside to do good. How can
Yeah.
someone learn more about their egos and the egos of other persons, and how can they keep egos in check?
That's a great question. And I've been in HR for a long time, and you've been in business for a long time, and there are so many like personality tests that you can do that I hate to be cliche, but honestly, if you're not understanding like how your personality operates, it's probably good to understand, via Myers-Briggs or success factors or any of those things that help you do that. And that's not a bad thing. Honestly, if you're doing things like that, then you really are interested in understanding how you function and how you interact with other people. But even beyond that, it's do we ask people? Like, do we ask coworkers? Do we ask other leaders? Like, how am I perceived? And how can I do better? Now the narcissistic person doesn't want to hear that. They don't want to know that because everything they do is right. So putting your ego aside, I think is and this is really cliche too, but it's seeking to understand before seeking to be understood. Like really trying to understand where other people are coming from. That's how you put your ego aside. If you're really interested in a success of an organization and relationships that you have, it's really about do I really understand what my coworker is going through or what they understand of what I'm trying to accomplish, and then you can adjust if you need to, right? That's how you put your ego aside. Because if you again, if it's all about you, then you will get some short-term followers that fear you, not respect. I'm not going to use the word respect. I'm going to use fear. They fear the retribution of not having you on your side. You'll get that for a little while, and you'll have short bursts of success in companies with that kind of authoritarian, I don't know, narcissistic leadership style. But long term, you're going to lose employees. People get burned out, like you said, and you won't have that success. And so it's really important to put your ego aside and say, what are we really trying to accomplish? What are we doing wrong here? Is my idea not the best idea? And who has a better idea? And am I mature enough to step aside sometimes and say, this is better? And I am mature enough to say, maybe I was wrong. You rarely hear a narcissistic person say, I'm sorry. I got that wrong. How many times in business, Mateo, have you heard someone say, I didn't get that right. I'm sorry. Sorry I did it that way. Let's move forward. That's putting your ego aside.
Yeah, 100%. Let's go back to the cliches around the nice guy. nice person, right?
Yeah.
Um, Sometimes we can think about these people about not having ambition or not, not taking risks. What are your thoughts there? Is there a place for ambition and risk taking in doing good?
Yeah, that is so hard. Because that is the stereotype again of a nice guy or a nice person. You yeah, it's the reason you are nice sometimes, and this does tend can be true sometimes. The reason is you're nice is because you're afraid of taking that chance, or you're afraid if you're not nice, that person, you'll receive retribution from that unkind person. But I would say that's when nice people need to step up and say, it was like I was saying in the beginning of our conversation. If you know that you can do something, you're good at it, and you'll be sitting. Maybe you want to do public speaking, and you're sitting in an audience, and you say, I can do that as good as that person. But maybe that's not what I deserve, or maybe that's not what I should be doing. The kind person needs to step out and say, I can do that, and I will do that, and I'll be good at that. And just because I'm doing that, that doesn't slight anyone else, or it doesn't push someone else's opportunity away. It's just me taking my advantage of my talent. And you're right. I mean, it is sometimes a challenge for that kind person to say, I need to focus on me and say, this is my opportunity and I need to step up. So risk taking it honestly is harder for that good, kind, or nice person. But I would argue that they're a lot more mindful, and the road that they take will be a much higher quality road because it'll be about them, but it'll also be about other people and who they can help. So that's the advantage of it. Um, but it is harder for some reason for the kind, nice person because they tend to be more intuitive. They watch other people's reactions more. They're more worried about what people think about them. Let's be real, the narcissist person doesn't care what people think about them. They just know they're the best. But the advantage of being kind and nice is you're very intuitive. You look around, you're like, I almost can see how that person is feeling and how they feel about me. If you take that too far, then it inhibits you. You're worried so much about what people think that it inhibits you from taking that risk or taking that step outside yourself to do something that maybe you're afraid to do. And so it's a hard balance. And I also like to say that, some people think it's harder to be kind or I'm sorry, harder to be mean. Actually, it's harder to be kind. It's easy to be mean. That's easy. Like you just focus on you all the time and everything you do is about you and decisions are easy. It's like, well, I'm right. I'm just going to plow forward. But for the kind person, it's harder because you take into consideration what other people are thinking and feeling, what their ambitions are combined with what your ambitions are. And so it's a much more complicated process. But I would argue at the end of the day, the product is much better. When I was working on my master's degree, I went to Holland, to the Netherlands for it was like a 2-week project, and we worked in teams, and I was fascinated by how the Dutch look at that whole process. So we were trying to accomplish a goal. We were trying to do a project, and so we were talking about ideas and what we were going to do. And so the group leader, she just went around and asked everyone, like, what are your thoughts on this? And so we got deep thoughts from every participant of that project. And then I'm like, oh, great. I think we've come to, some ideas were bubbling up. I think we're coming to a good solution. And then she said, now wait a minute. I don't think we've fully fleshed this. I don't think we've gotten everyone's input. And so let's go around again. So we went around to every person one more time. And again, ideas were bubbling up. I mean, I thought, and we had a time limit, Mateo. Like we had a time limit. I'm like, we're running out of time. And I thought we came to some good conclusions the second time around. And then she said, now I want to make sure we get everyone's input. We went around a third time to get everyone getting all of their input. And I can tell you the product was so much better than what it would have been. Because kind of the US culture is you got that one person or two, this is the idea, this is the best idea. They're arguing how their idea is better than anyone else. And we tend to go with that one, right? But their product isn't always the best. And so that's what I mean by this process of being kind and getting everyone else's input. It was such a great experience. I learned so much from that. And I've tried to implement that in my career. But it's not always welcomed, right? Because you have that strong personality that's like, it's gonna be my way or the highway. So
Yeah. As I listen to you, what I think is being kind is in itself ambitious and risky. So you are being ambitious. If you want to, be a very kind and good person at work, that in itself is ambitious and it is risky because you will find people that will struggle and fight against that. But if you really go out there and be the nice, assertive person that we are talking about, that in itself is ambitious. And so I like that spin and what you were talking about, and you can be all of it at once, right?
100%. It is. And you're targeted anyway for kind because people think, oh, that's an easy target to take out because there's not gonna be any backlash because they're so nice. It is risky. Yeah.
Um, is there a moral compass, a universal moral compass that should guide us? Or is this a personal question for each of us when we are defining good, defining bad? How far do I go? What do you think?
And that is such a great philosophical question. So in researching this book, I looked at a lot of different cultures, and one thing I was looking for was, that refrain of the uh, "do unto others as you want others to do unto you." And I thought, well, is that just kind of a Christian philosophy? But I looked in all like several different cultures, and I think in every culture there's it's not exactly said that way, but there is this sense of, karma or do unto others as you want them to do to you. And so that's something I think that is universal. And that's the challenge when you're talking about work culture or any sort of culture. What are some more universal principles that you can apply that will add value to culture? And that's one thing that I research and I think is very important is why don't we live by that? Because it's pretty culturally diverse as to that's how we should operate. And so if you're talking religion or you're talking work culture or you're talking any sort of organizational culture, I think if you base things on that, then it can grow from there. And many work cultures are going to be different in their styles. Some are going to be more assertive, more aggressive, some are going to be less. You look at a not-for-profit, that's more mission based rather than if you're a for-profit company that's all about um, profits and making money. But I think a base level for all those is how do you treat each other? Do you treat each other like you want to be treated? And how does that add value to the company? And if you're based in that, honestly, the sky's the limit if your culture is really good that way. But it's tricky, right? Because there's books and things written on, if you're kind and you act that way, you're stupid and it doesn't add value to culture. You're weak, like you don't get things done. And so that's the philosophical part of it. And in my experience, in my years of experience in HR and business, those toxic cultures that are really self-centered don't really last. I've been with companies that, the culture was good, and then just a couple of bad apples with that bad attitude come in, and it's like this. It's a free fall. It's crazy to watch.
Yeah. Oh, I agree with you. I 100% agree with you. And I think it's all about the long-term vision, right? It's all about the short-term versus long-term vision. You said it before. You can have a very bad culture, very, uh, you know, aggressive, a top-down culture, and that helps for a while. You're ruling by fear, not by respect, but it doesn't help in the long term. It doesn't help. And then, you know, things happen at life. right? And then you run again into certain people that you work with, but the situation is different, and you are going to want you have behaved in a different way, right? Because now things change and you're in a different situation and people remember how you make them feel, right?
Yeah.
So if they make them feel the wrong way, it's not going to put you in a great situation. Which takes me to the next question. What is the role of forgiveness in doing good?
Oh, it's so important. It's so important. My wife and I are actually talking about that this last night. It if you so and you mentioned it earlier where and I love that example you gave, Mateo, where your direct report came to you and said, "Hey, this is how you made me feel." Um, if if she wouldn't have forgiven you for that, right, and went on with animus toward you, and I've seen this a lot in work culture where when someone is wronged, now that person is on a mission to take that person out. And when people spend more time at work concerned about I'm going to take out my coworker or I'm being taken out or whatever, then then there's so much productivity loss and so many so many things that could have happened don't happen. And so I think forgiveness and honestly forgiveness for the kind person is really important because kind people also tend to get wrapped up in they're so conscious about how they treat other people when they're treated poorly it cuts even deeper. And if they can't forgive, then sometimes the kind person turns, they succumb to that whole nasty work culture, and they sometimes can become worse than those mean people. The mean people just walk away and they don't care. Forgiveness doesn't really register for them because they're just on to the next thing that's going to make them look awesome. They don't really care. But sometimes the kind person, if they can't forgive, they just get into this, they fall into this loop of grudge holding and it really hurts them more than anything. But if you have that in your culture where people just don't forgive each other and it just becomes all out war. And it's so important. I love how you brought that up. Like forgiveness is essential, even in business, right? We're taught in school or just we see in our work culture that you know you just have to build up these sharp edges and sharp elbows and just become emotionless machines and that doesn't help corporations. It doesn't help culture. And I think forgiveness is really, really important. And it's really important that if you're having a disagreement, hey, let's go to lunch and let's talk about this and let's work through this and let's have a real conversation. But a lot of times people won't do that. They don't engage in that. It's all out warfare because you wronged me and I'm going to find a way to wrong you. And it's a never ending cycle that does not bring good. So it's not good.
For people listening, what will make you happy they take with them after listening to this episode or reading your book afterwards? What is the most important message you want to convey?
I want to empower people who are kind to realize that it is not a weakness, it is a strength. I can't tell you, Mateo, for my whole career, I can't count how many times people have said to me, "You're too nice." Really? Can you really be too nice? I want people who have been told their whole career, "You're too nice, you're too kind, you're too good to be in business," to know that it is a strength, it's not a weakness. Uh, However, you have to be prepared to deal with people who aren't nice. And I would say that the happy message coming from here, I've tried to be kind and good my whole career. And honestly, I've probably lost jobs because people have been able to attack me. But I can also say that because I am kind and I'm not gonna retaliate in a unethical way like some people do. But every next step for me has been a step up and it's been a better opportunity. And I want to tell kind people out there, just stick at it, stick with it, hold true to who you are, hold true to to your true self and build up your skills, build up your savings sometimes, and just keep doing it and be brave and call people out when they're not kind because that's not right. And you can be valiant and be kind. It's harder to be nice at work because it's easy to be mean in my mind. Although you do not sleep well at night, by the way, if you're unethical or you do things illegal or you are mean to coworkers for your own benefit, you don't sleep well at night. I've always slept well, Mateo, not without any trouble. And then the next opportunity that comes along is always better. And because people know, and I have a specific example of, you know, I went to work for a company based out of DC. I had accepted the position, and I'd been doing some other interviews for, you know, high level HR roles, and I'm literally in the Washington DC, the DCA airport, heading home from my first week at work. I was commuting and telecommuting from Idaho to Washington DC area, and I get this phone call in the airport, and it was a company that I was interviewing with, but their interview process has just kind of taken a long time, and they said, "Hey, we really want you. We want to offer you this job." Uh, and unfortunately, I'd already committed to this other company, but and this was a great company, a great opportunity, and I said, "Well, why why are you interested in me? I mean, really, what kind of tipped the scale for me?" And they said, "We asked around the community, and everyone we talked to said you are great to work with. You're a good guy. The good word, right? You're you're you are what HR should be, and that's why we want to hire you." And so, to me, at that point, I was like, "This is working. Being good, being kind, this works because you have that reputation. You sleep well at night." And honestly, the next opportunity is always better because Pete, you have the great reputation of being a good and kind person.
It might be less flashy, but in the long term, it's better, healthier, and just, makes you happier. So
It
I'm
does.
with you, and I'm happy that you had that situation, and I can see it. Brad, this has been an amazing conversation. Thank you so much for being on the show, for taking the time and sharing your story. I look forward to reading your book, and we'll definitely stay in touch. And maybe we can do another episode once the book is out.
I would love that. And this has been a pleasure. Thank you, Mateo, for letting me on your podcast. And yeah, when it's published, let's do it. I'd like to talk again. It's been great.